Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepy Time Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. This is a podcast where I read old books, sometimes fiction, sometimes non-fiction, in the most boring way I can, to try help slow your spinning mind enough for you to fall asleep in the most natural way possible. The stresses of life often follow us to bed and keep us company, but I'm here to distract you from them and help you drift away. But before you do fall asleep, if you would like to help out Sleepy Time Tales reach more people, I don't do any promotions or advertising or anything of that sort, so the only way people will hear about it is if you tell them about it. So if this show is helping you and you know someone struggling to sleep, just let them know where to find it. You can also help out the show by signing up on the Patreon for as little as $2 a month. That helps me cover costs and keep the show going. You can also make once-off tips to the tip jar in the Ko-Fi, which is linked in the show notes, along with the Patreon. Thanks for taking the time. Let's get back to the Republic, which I literally just read and I can barely tell you what it's about. So snuggle down, close your eyes, breathe deeply and listen closely as I lead you down the path to sleep. We return this week to the Republic by Plato. What then, he said, is still remaining to us of the work of legislation? Nothing to us, I replied, but to Apollo, the god of Delphi, there remains the ordering of the greatest and noblest and chiefest things of all. Which are they, he said? The institution of temples and sacrifices, and the entire service of gods, demigods, and heroes. Also the ordering of the repositories of the dead and the rites which have to be observed by him who would propitiate the inhabitants of the world below. These are matters of which we are ignorant ourselves, and as founders of a city, we should be unwise in trusting them to any interpreter but our ancestral deity. He is the God who sits in the center, on the navel of the earth, and he is the interpreter of all religion to all mankind. You're right, and we will do as you propose. But where amid all this is justice, son of Ariston? Tell me where. Now that our city has been made habitable, light a candle and search, and get your brother and Polemarchus and the rest of our friends to help, and let us see where in it we can discover justice and where injustice, and in what they differ from one another, and which of them the gods who would be happy should have for his portion, whether seen or unseen by gods and men. Nonsense, said Glaucon. Did you not promise to search yourself, saying that for you not to help justice in her need would be an impiety? I do not deny that I said so, and as you remind me, I will be as good as my word, but you must join. We will, he replied. Well then, I hope to make the discovery in this way. I mean to begin with the assumption that our state, if rightly ordered, is perfect. That is most certain. And being perfect is therefore wise and valiant and temperate and just. That is likewise clear. And whichever of these qualities we find in the state, the one which is not found will be the residue. Very good. If there were 4 things, we were searching for one of them, wherever it might be. The one sought for might be known to us from the first, and there would be no further trouble. Or we might know the other 3 first, and then the 4th would clearly be the one left. Very true, he said. And is not a similar method to be pursued about the virtues, which are also 4 in number? First among the virtues found in this state, wisdom comes into view, and in this I detect a certain peculiarity. What is that? The state which we have been describing is said to be wise as being good in counsel. Very true. And good counsel is clearly a kind of knowledge. For not by ignorance, but by knowledge do men counsel well. Clearly. And the kinds of knowledge in a state are many and diverse. Of course. There is the knowledge of the carpenter. But is that the sort of knowledge which gives the city the title of wise and good in counsel? Certainly not. That would only give a city the reputation of skill in carpentering. Then a city is not to be called wise because possessing a knowledge which counsels for the best about wooden implements. Certainly not. Nor by reason of a knowledge which advises about brazen pots, I said, nor as possessing any other similar knowledge. Not by reason of any of them, he said, nor yet by reason of a knowledge which cultivates the earth that would give the city the name of agricultural. Yes. Well, I said, and is there any knowledge in our recently founded state among any of the citizens which advises, not about any particular thing in the state, but about the whole, and considers how a state can best deal with itself and with other states? There certainly is. And what is this knowledge? And among whom is it found? I asked. It is the knowledge of the guardians, he replied, and is found among those whom we were just now describing as perfect guardians. And what is the name which the city derives from the possession of this sort of knowledge? The name of good in counsel and truly wise. And will there be in our city more of these true guardians or more smiths? The smiths, he replied, will be far more numerous. Will not the guardians be the smallest of all the classes who receive a name from the profession of some kind of knowledge? Much the smallest. And so by reason of the smallest part or class, and of the knowledge which resides in this presiding and ruling part of itself, the whole state being thus constituted according to nature will be wise. And this which has the only knowledge worthy to be called wisdom has been ordained by nature to be of all classes the least. Most true. Thus then, I said, the nature and place of the state of one of the four virtues has somehow or other been discovered. And in my humble opinion, very satisfactorily discovered, he replied. Again, I said, there is no difficulty in seeing the nature of courage, and in what part that quality resides which gives the name of courageous to the state. How do you mean? Why, I said, everyone who calls any state courageous or cowardly will be thinking of the part which fights and goes out to war on the state's behalf. No one, he replied, would ever think of any other. The rest of the citizens may be courageous or may be cowardly, but their courage or cowardice will not, as I conceive, have the effect of making the city either the one or the other. Certainly not. The city will be courageous in virtue of a portion of herself which preserves under all circumstances that opinion about the nature of things to be feared and not to be feared, which our legislator educated them, and this is what you term courage. I should like to hear what you are saying once more, for I do not think that I perfectly understand you. I mean that courage is a kind of salvation. Salvation of what? Of the opinion respecting things to be feared, what they are and of what nature, which the law implants through education, and I mean by the words, under all circumstances, to intimate that in pleasure or in pain, or under the influence of desire or fear, a man preserves and does not lose this opinion. Shall I give you an illustration? If you please. You know, I said that dyers, when they want to dye wool for making the true sea purple, begin by selecting their white color first. This they prepare and dress with much care and pains, in order that the white ground may take the purple hue in full perfection. The dyeing then proceeds, and whatever is dyed in this manner becomes a fast color, and no washing either with lyes or without them can take away the bloom. But when the ground has not been duly prepared, you will have noticed how poor is the look either of purple or of any other color. Yes, he said, I know that they have a washed out and ridiculous appearance. Then now, I said, you will understand what our object in selecting our soldiers and educating them in music and gymnastic. We were contriving influences which would prepare them to take the dye of the laws in perfection, and the color of their opinion and dangers, and of every other opinion, was to be indelibly fixed by their nurturing and training, not to be washed away by such potent lies as pleasure, mightier agent far in washing the soul than any soda or lie, or by sorrow, fear, and desire, the mightiest of all other solvents. And this sort of universal saving power of true opinion in conformity with law about real and false dangers, I call and maintain to be courage, unless you disagree. But I agree, he replied. For I suppose that you mean to exclude mere uninstructed courage, such as that of a wild beast or of a slave. This, in your opinion, is not the courage which the law ordains, and ought to have another name. Most certainly. Then I may infer courage to be such as you describe? Why, yes, said I, you may. And if you add the words of a citizen, you will not be far wrong. Hereafter, if you like, we will carry the examination further. But at present we are seeking not for courage but justice, and for the purpose of our inquiry we have said enough. You are right, he replied. Two virtues remain to be discovered in the state. First, temperance, and then justice, which is the end of our search. Very true. Now, can we find justice without troubling ourselves about temperance? I do not know how that can be accomplished, he said, nor do I desire that justice should be brought to light and temperance lost sight of, and therefore I wish that you would do me the favor of considering temperance first. Certainly, I replied. I should not be justified in refusing your request. Then consider, he said. Yes, I replied, I will. And as far as I can at present see, the virtue of temperance has more of the nature of harmony and symphony than the preceding. How so? He asked. Temperance, I replied, is the ordering or controlling of certain pleasures and desires. This is curiously enough implied in the saying of a man being his own master, and other traces of the same notion may be found in language. No doubt, he said. There is something ridiculous in the expression master of himself, for the master is also the servant, and the servant the master, and in all these modes of speaking the same person is denoted. Certainly. The meaning is, I believe, that in the human soul there is a better and also a worse principle, and when the better has the worse under control, then a man is said to be master of himself, and this is a term of praise, but when owing to evil education or association, the better principle, which is also the smaller, is overwhelmed by the greater mass of the worse. In this case he is blamed and is called the slave of self and unprincipled. Yes, there is reason in that. And now, I said, look at our newly created state, and there you will find one of these two conditions realized. For the state, as you will acknowledge, must be truly called master of itself, if the words temperance and self-mastery truly express the rule of the better part over the worse. Yes, he said, I see that what you say is true. Let me further note that the manifold and complex pleasures and desires and pains are generally found in children and women and servants, and in the free men, so-called, who are of the lowest and more numerous class. Certainly, he said. Whereas the simple and moderate desires which follow reason, and are under the guidance of mind and true opinion, are to be found only in a few, and those the best born and best educated. Very true. These two, as you may perceive, have a place in our state, and the meaner desire of the many are held down by the virtuous desires and wisdom of the few. That I perceive, he said. Then if there be any city which may be described as master of its own pleasures, the desire and master of itself, ours may claim such a designation. Certainly, he replied. It may also be called temperate, and for the same reasons. Yes. And if there be any state in which rulers and subjects will be agreed to as the question who are to rule, that again will be our state. Undoubtedly. And the citizens being thus agreed among themselves, in which class will temperance be found, in the rulers or in the subjects? In both, as I should imagine, he replied. Do you observe that we were not far wrong in our guess that temperance was a sort of harmony? Why so? Why, because temperance is unlike courage and wisdom, each of which resides in a part only, the one making the state wise and the other valiant. Not so temperance, which extends to the whole and runs through all the notes of the scale, and produces a harmony of the weaker and the stronger and the middle class, whether you suppose them to be stronger or weaker in wisdom or power or numbers or wealth or anything else. Most truly, then, may we deem temperance to be the agreement of the naturally superior and inferior, as to the right to rule of either, both in states and in individuals. I entirely agree with you. And so I said we may consider 3 out of the 4 virtues to have been discovered in our state. The last of those qualities which make a state virtuous must be justice, if we only knew what that was. The inference is obvious. The time then has arrived, Glaucon, when like huntsmen we should surround the cover and look sharp that justice does not steal away and pass out of sight and escape us. For beyond a doubt she is somewhere in this country. Watch therefore and strive to catch a sight of her, and if you see her first, let me know. Would that I could, but you should regard me as a follower who has just eyes enough to see what you show him. That is about as much as I am good for. Offer up a prayer with me and follow. I will, but you must show me the way. Here is no path, I said, and the wood is dark and perplexing. Still we must push on. Let us push on. Here I saw something. Hello, I said. I began to perceive a track, and I believe that the quarry will not escape. Good news, he said. Truly, I said, we are stupid fellows. Why so? Why, my good sir, at the beginning of our inquiry, ages ago, there was justice tumbling out at our feet, and we never saw her. Nothing could be more ridiculous. Like people who go about looking for what they have in their hands. That was the way with us. We looked not at what we were seeking, but at what was far off in the distance. And therefore, I suppose, we missed her. What do you mean? I mean to say that in reality, for a long time we have been talking of justice and have failed to recognize her. I grow impatient at the length of your exordium. Well then, tell me, I said, whether I am right or not. You remember the original principle which we were always laying down at the foundation of the state, that one man should practice one thing only, the thing to which his nature was best adapted. Now justice is this principle or a part of it. Yes, we often said that one man should do one thing only. Further, we affirmed that justice was doing one's own business and not being a busybody. We said so again and again, and many others have said the same to us. Yes, we said so. And then to do one's own business in a certain way may be assumed to be justice. Can you tell me whence I derive this inference? I cannot, but I should like to be told. Because I think that this is the only virtue which remains in this state when the other virtues of temperance and courage and wisdom are abstracted, and that this is the ultimate cause and condition of the existence of all of them, and while remaining in them is also their preservative. And while we were saying that if 3 were discovered by us, justice would be the 4th or remaining one. That follows of necessity. If we are asked to determine which of these 4 qualities by its presence contributes most to the excellence of the state, whether the agreement of rulers and subjects, or the preservation in the soldiers of the opinion which the law ordains about the true nature of dangers or wisdom and watchfulness in the rulers, or whether this other which I am mentioning, and which is found in children and women, slave and freeman, artist, ruler, subject, the quality I mean of everyone doing his own work, and not being a busybody, would claim the palm, the question is not so easily answered. Certainly, he replied, there would be a difficulty in saying which. Then the power of each individual in the state to do his own work appears to compete with the other political virtues, wisdom, temperance, courage. Yes, he said. And the virtue which enters into this competition is justice? Exactly. Let us look at the question from another point of view. Are not the rulers in a state those to whom you would entrust the office of determining suits at law? Certainly. And are suits decided on any other ground but that a man may neither take what is others, nor be deprived of what is his own? Yes, that is their principle. Which is a just principle? Yes. Then on this man also justice will be admitted to be having and doing what is a man's own and belongs to him. Very true. Think now and say whether you agree with me or not. Suppose a carpenter to be doing the business of a cobbler, or a cobbler of a carpenter. and suppose them to exchange their implements or their duties, or the same person to be doing the work of both, or whatever the change, do you think that any great harm would result to the state? Not much. But when the cobbler, or any other man whom nature designed to be a trader, having his heart lifted up by wealth or strength or the number of his followers, or like any advantage, attempts to force his way into the class of warriors, or a warrior into that of legislators and guardians, for which he is unfitted, and either to take the implements or the duties of the other, or when one man is a trader, legislator, and warrior all in one, then I think you will agree with me in saying that this exchange and this meddling of one with another is the ruin of the state. Most true. Seeing I said that there are three distinct classes, any meddling of one with another, or the change of one into another, is the greatest harm to the state, and may be most justly termed evil-doing. Precisely. And the greatest degree of evil-doing to one's own city would be termed by you injustice. Certainly. This then is injustice. And on the other hand, when the trader, the auxiliary, and the guardian each do their own business, this is justice and will make the city just. I agree with you. We will not, I said, be over-positive as yet. But if on trial this conception of justice be verified in the individual as well as in the state, there will be no longer any room for doubt. If it be not verified, we must have a fresh inquiry. First, let us complete the old investigation which we began, as you remember, under the impression that, if we could previously examine justice on the larger scale, there would be less difficulty in discerning her in the individual. That larger example appeared to be the state, and accordingly we constructed as good a one as we could, knowing well that in the good state justice would be found. Let the discovery which we made be now applied to the individual. If they agree, we shall be satisfied, or if there be a difference in the individual, we will come back to the state and have another trial of the theory. The friction of the two, when rubbed together, may possibly strike a light in which justice will shine forth, and the vision which is then revealed we will fix in our souls. That will be in regular course. Let us do as you say. I proceeded to ask, when two things, a greater and less, are called by the same name, are they like or unlike in so far as they are called the same? Like, he replied. The just man, then, if we regard the idea of justice only, will be like the just state. He will. And a state that was thought by us to be just when the three classes in the state severally did their own business, and also thought to be temperate and valiant and wise by reason of certain other affections and qualities of the same classes. True, he said. And so of the individual. We may assume that he has the same three principles in his own soul which are found in the state, and he may be rightly described in the same terms, because he is affected in the same manner. Certainly, he said. Once more then, O my friend, we have alighted upon an easy question, whether the soul has these three principles or not. An easy question. Nay, rather, Socrates, the proverb holds that hard is the good. Very true, I said, and I do not think that the method which we are employing is at all adequate to the accurate solution of this question. The true method is another and a longer one. Still, we may arrive at a solution not below the level of the previous inquiry. May we not be satisfied with that, he said. Under the circumstances, I am quite content. I too, I replied, shall be extremely well satisfied. Then faint not in pursuing the speculation, he said. Must we not acknowledge, I said, that in each of us there are the same principles and habits which there are in the state, and that from the individual they pass into the state? How else can they come there? Take the quality of passion or spirit. It would be ridiculous to imagine that this quality, when found in states, is not derived from the individuals who are supposed to possess it. For example, the Thracians, Scythians, and in general the northern nations. And the same may be said of the love of knowledge, which is the special characteristic of our part of the world, or the love of money, which may, with equal truth, be attributed to the Phoenicians and Egyptians. Exactly so, he said. There is no difficulty in understanding this, none whatsoever. But the question is not quite so easy when we proceed to ask whether these principles are three or one. Whether, that is to say, we learn with one part of our nature, are angry with another, and with a third part desire the satisfaction of our natural appetites. Whether the whole soul comes into play in each sort of action, determine that is the difficulty. Yes, he said, there lies the difficulty. Then let us now try and determine whether they are the same or different. How can we? He asked. I replied as follows. The same thing clearly cannot act or be acted upon in the same part or in relation to the same thing at the same time in contrary ways. And therefore, whenever this contradiction occurs in things apparently the same, we know that they are really not the same, but different. Good. For example, I said, can the same thing be at rest and in motion at the same time in the same part? Impossible. Still, I said, let us have more precise statement of terms, lest we should hereafter fall out by the way. Imagine the case of a man who is standing and also moving his hands and his head, and suppose a person to say that one and the same person is in motion and at rest at the same moment. To such a mode of speech we should object, and should rather say that one part of him is in motion while the other is at rest. Very true. And suppose the objector to refine still further and to draw the nice distinction that not only parts of tops, but whole tops, when they spin around with their pegs fixed on the same spot, are at rest and in motion at the same time. And he made the same of anything which revolves in the same spot. His objection would not be admitted by us, because in such cases things are not at rest, and in motion and in the same parts of themselves. We should rather say that they have both an axis and a circumference, and that the axis stands still, for there's no deviation from the perpendicular, and that the circumference goes round. But if while revolving the axis inclines either to the right or left, forwards or backwards, then in no point of view can they be at rest. That is the correct mode of describing them, he replied. Then none of these objections will confuse us or incline us to believe the same thing at the same time, in the same part, or in relation to the same thing, can act or be acted upon in contrary ways. Certainly not according to my way of thinking. Yet I said that we may not be compelled to examine all such objections, and prove at length that they are untrue. Let us assume their absurdity and go forward on the understanding that hereafter, if this assumption turn out to be untrue, all the consequences which follow shall be withdrawn. Yes, he said, that will be the best way. Well, I said, would you not allow that assent and dissent, desire and aversion, attraction and repulsion, all of them opposites, whether they are regarded as active or passive, for that makes no difference in the face of their opposition? Yes, he said, they are opposites. Well, I said, and hunger and thirst and the desires in general, and again willing and wishing, all these you would refer to the classes already mentioned. You would say, would you not, that the soul of him who desires is seeking after the object of his desire, and that he is drawing to himself the thing which he wishes to possess? Or again, when a person wants anything to be given him, his mind, longing for the realization of his desire, intimates his wish to have it by a nod of assent, as if he had been asked a question. Very true. And what would you say of unwillingness and dislike and absence of desire? Should not these be referred to the opposite class of repulsion and rejection? Certainly. Admitting this to be true of desire generally, let us suppose a particular class of desires, and out of these we will select hunger and thirst, as they are termed. Which are the most obvious of them? Let us take that class, he said. The object of one is food and of the other drink. Yes. And here comes the point. Is not thirst the desire which the soul has of drink, and of drink only, not of drink qualified by anything else, for example, warm or cold, or much or little, or in a word, a drink of any particular sort? But if the thirst be accompanied by heat, then the desire is of cold drink, or if accompanied by cold, then of warm drink. Or if the thirst be excessive, then the drink which is desired will be excessive, or if not, the quantity of drink will also be small. But thirst pure and simple will desire drink pure and simple, which is the natural satisfaction of thirst, as food is of hunger. Yes, he said, the simple desire is, as you say, in every case of the simple object, and the qualified desire of the qualified object. But here a confusion may arise, and I should wish to guard against an opponent starting up and saying that no man desires drink only, but good drink, or food only, but good food. For good is the universal object of desire, and thirst, being a desire, will necessarily be thirst after a good drink, and the same is true of every other desire. Yes, he replied, the opponent might have something to say. Nevertheless, I should still maintain that of relatives some have a quality attached to either term of the relation. Others are simple and have their correlatives simple. I do not know what you mean. Well, you know, of course, that greater is relative to less, certainly, and the much greater to the much less, yes, and sometime greater to the sometime less, and greater that is to be to the less that is to be. Certainly, he said. And so of more and less and other correlative terms, such as the double and the half or again, the lighter and the heavier, the swifter and the slower, and of hot and cold, and of any other relatives, is not this true of all of them? Yes. And does not the same principle hold in the sciences? The object of science is knowledge, assuming that to be the true definition. But the object of a particular science is a particular kind of knowledge. I mean, for example, that the science of house building is a kind of knowledge which is defined and distinguished from other kinds, and is therefore termed architecture. Certainly. Because it has a particular quality which no other has. Yes. And has this particular quality because it has an object of particular kind, and this is true of the other arts and sciences? Yes. Now then, if I've made myself clear, you will understand my original meaning in what I said about relatives. My meaning was that if one term of a relation is taken alone, the other is taken alone. If one term is qualified, the other is also qualified. I do not mean to say that relatives may not be disparate, or that science of health is healthy, or of disease necessarily diseased, or that the sciences of good and evil are therefore good and evil, but only that, when the term science is no longer used absolutely, but as a qualified object, which in this case is the nature of health and disease, it becomes defined, and is hence called not merely science, but the science of medicine. I quite understand, and I think as you do. Would you not say that thirst is one of these essentially relative terms, having clearly a relation? Yes, thirst is relative to drink, and a certain kind of thirst is relative to a certain kind of drink. But thirst taken alone is neither of much nor little, nor of good or bad, nor of any particular kind of drink, but of drink only. Certainly. Then the soul of the thirsty one, insofar as he is thirsty, desires only drink, for this he yearns and tries to obtain it. That is plain. And if you suppose something which pulls a thirsty soul away from drink, that must be different from the thirsty principle which draws him like a beast to drink. For as we were saying, the same thing cannot, at the same time, with the same part of itself, act in contrary ways about the same. Impossible. No more than you can say that the hands of the archer push and pull the bow at the same time. But what you say is that one hand pushes and the other pulls. Exactly so, he replied. And might a man be thirsty and yet unwilling to drink? Yes, he said, it constantly happens. And in such a case, what is one to say? Would you not say that there was something in the soul bidding a man to drink, and something else forbidding him, which is other and stronger than the principle which bids him? I should say so. And the forbidding principle is derived from reason, and that which bids and attracts proceeds from passion and disease. Clearly. Then we may fairly assume that they are two, and that they differ from one another. The one with which a man reasons we may call the rational principle of the soul. The other, which he loves and hungers and thirsts and feels, the flutterings of any other desire, may be termed the irrational or appetitive, the ally of sundry pleasures and satisfactions. Yes, he said, we may fairly assume them to be different. Then let us finally determine that there are two principles existing in the soul. And what of passion or spirit? Is it a third or akin to one of the preceding? I should be inclined to say akin to desire. And I think I'm going to leave that there. I just read through this whole thing and I have absolutely no idea what's going on. But if you would like to pick up where I'm leaving off, you can find the original on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepy Time Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to follow or subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get your new episodes when they come out. Good night, and sweet dreams.